Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Simon, and it's great being with you once again. We're talking about the Jezebel spirit, and we're comparing it with the modern day narcissist. And I hope it's been interesting for you. We're in part 5 today, and I'm going to rush through this a little bit faster today because as I was putting this together, I couldn't help myself. I just kept adding this and adding that and thinking, oh, I should say this. So forgive me for the rush in trying to get through this as quickly as I can so I don't bore you. I want you to understand that at New Horizons Institute of Counseling, we're for healing, peace, and harmony. We're for you. And in Christian counseling or faith-based counseling ministry, we're there to help you through whatever crisis, whatever issues are going on. And we don't beat you over the head with the Bible. You know, secular folks might say, oh, they're going to beat you over the head with the Bible. No, we don't do that. But we do use the Bible as a foundation for our values, our morals, and so on. And that helps us because many things that we have learned from the Bible have come true up to our day and time. That means all the prophecies, all the promises, thousands of them, have come true up to our day and time. Very detailed ones in many cases. No other, let's say Christianity and Judaism, probably the only faiths that can back up what they're saying. And in counseling, for spiritual counseling, in helping you with these kinds of issues and disagreements, problems in relationship, things like emotional issues and so on. Gosh, Bible has a lot to say about it. We just need to find it sometimes and then use it. And I'll tell you what, it works. I've been doing this for 30 years, and for 30 years, there have been wonderful events where individuals and couples and families have changed for the better, improved, and are still together as families and couples. The mind games of the Jezebel is what we're focusing on today. We previously spoke about the power and control tactics of the Jezebel or the narcissist. And within that is a category of emotional abuse. And within emotional abuse are mind games. And that's what we're focusing on because one of the primary tactics, or maybe not tactics, but strategies of the Jezebel narcissist is the use of playing games with your mind. It's emotional abuse, it gets what they want, and it's over time in many cases. It doesn't happen overnight, and you don't even realize it's happening, so it's very subtle. The mind games of the Jezebel or narcissist is like an arsenal of crazy-making tactics and to abuse and undermine their victims. Now, I was asked the other day, are all narcissists Jezebels? And we've spoken previously using the example of the spectrum, and you have the narcissist over here, you have the narcissist over here, mild to severe, and very often considered over here in this severe case as the malignant narcissist or the sociopath, psychopath narcissist, way on this end of the spectrum. The antisocial personality would be classified way over here. They're all narcissists, but they get worse as you go down the spectrum. Well, Jezebels would be over here because the Jezebel of the Bible that we have as our example has done all of these things over here that the sociopath or psychopath has done, is doing. They're mean, they're murderous, they're conniving, and very, very selfish. And to them, it's what they want, and they get it. One way or another, it doesn't matter. They have no conscience. They have no problems with feeling guilty or remorse, just as the sociopath, psychopath, antisocial personality, no conscience, they feel powerful over you because they don't feel bad doing those things, and they laugh at you because you feel bad, and that makes them feel powerful. It inflates their fantasy bubble to make them believe that they are these almost godlike individuals. These individuals over here, the narcissists that are more the mild, well, as they progress along the spectrum, these aren't so bad. These are Christians. You could still be a Christian and have narcissistic tendencies, but you feel bad about it, and you work on it, and you try harder, and you may have to struggle more because there might be a DNA within you of that narcissism, and so you have to stand against it more. But as it progresses along the spectrum, you're fighting against it less and less until you get around midway point. And that midway point, suddenly the characteristics have been amplified, and the guilt, shame, remorse minimizes. It decreases to the point that it's non-existent. So the scripture says you've seared your conscience. And that's at this point the conscience has been seared. So I would say at this point, from this point on, we have the Jezebel spirit, or the attitude of Jezebel, as the scripture explains to us. So keep that in mind, that not all narcissists are Jezebels. If they're over here, okay, and they're feeling bad, and then they're working on things. They can't maybe make mistakes and all that, but they're still working on things. Over here, no. And so you want to keep that in mind as you avoid those individuals that are over here. Well, the mind games of the Jezebel or the narcissist, and that would be over here they begin, over here they become more intensified. They're the primary offensive and defensive strategies that are used in the mind games. A series of both conscious and unconscious actions or responses of psychological effect on another person. It's typically power and control through amusement, competitive advantage, getting what they want, which is basically their goal, getting what they want. Well, what does that mean? What does that interpret into? You ever hear the phrase playing you? Mind games are playing you. And oftentimes someone will describe certain things. It's been going on for a long time, and I'll say, I think he or she is playing you. Those mind games can be very devastating, but they can make you feel like you're going crazy. I've had wonderful people who have dated for a long time, maybe years, and so the day after they're married or shortly after marriage, suddenly this person changes. The person becomes more of that narcissist. They start to see these things that they didn't see during the dating period. Believe me, I've had clients that have dated for multiple years, not seeing it, and then suddenly it surfaces after marriage because it was a game. The amusement was there. Once the capture is made, then they got what they want, but also they're getting more of what they want in the supply they're receiving from that individual that they were striving so hard to hide their true selves from. So one study revealed that on average, it can take 7 meetings before seeing the dark side of a narcissist. 7, that's average, 7 meetings. Wow, that means we have to be careful when we're dating or when we're making new friends or in business connections. You don't meet that often, perhaps. You don't discuss things that much, or you're dealing with other things, and you don't see these things until perhaps after you've signed the contract. And unfortunately, then you wish you hadn't after the fact. The codependent, which most of you I'm sure are aware of who codependents are, they tend to be the most vulnerable because codependents tend to have a lower self-esteem, and they're easier targets for the narcissist. Now, I have a temperament that is a people-pleasing temperament. It likes doing for others. It gives. I feel good helping others. That's a big reward for me. It makes me feel accepted and so on. But if I don't set my boundaries, I can be vulnerable to the mind games or the power and control tactics of the narcissist or the Jezebel. Once I set my boundaries, I know, okay, once they go beyond this point, watch out, there's a sign, there's a red flag waving, be alert. We possibly have a narcissistic Jezebel in there somewhere. Be cautious. And that's all. That's all you have to do if you find yourself to be in that realm of codependency. Set the boundaries and reinforce them regularly to become more alert instead of subtly getting drawn into that trap through the mind games that are done. They'll tell you you're the most wonderful counselor in the whole world in the very beginning. I've heard so many good things and this and that and so on. And after a few meetings, suddenly you might be saying no about something, disagreeing about something they want, telling them, well, the Scripture doesn't tell us that, or values, that's not very moral. And whoop, now they come against you. You're the worst in the whole wide world. You're this, you're that. No different in friendships or relationships and so on. So what makes the codependent more vulnerable is not only their low self-esteem, if they have low self-esteem, but it's a trap of idealizing the narcissist or the Jezebel, kind of lifting them up, thinking, look how strong they are, or how much in control they are, or how well they make decisions. They're very assertive and so on. And, opposites tend to attract. Well, it's very true in that case. And as well, playing the game, the narcissist does the love bombing. We'll talk about that in a moment. Oh, you're wonderful, you're great, and everything, lifting up the one who might be vulnerable. And if they see that one is taking the bait, they know they got a chance here, and they keep working at that one. If they don't take the bait, they tend to, okay, move on, let's not waste our time here. Little by little, toleration occurs, and increasing abuse will occur over time. Well, the mind games, and I have what I call the short list here. There's all kinds of mind games going on. Gaslighting is what we're going to talk about today, and that's probably the number one mind game. Love bombing to degradation is another mind game. That's where, they'll swing from you're wonderful, you're great, they're loving, they're kind. Suddenly it's like a switch flipped on. They're now mean, unkind, saying things that they haven't said before, or saying things that are very hurtful. Then they swing back. Oftentimes when they know they've gone too far, they don't want abandonment, or they don't want rejection or loss of supply. So the switch flips back the other way. They go back to love bombing, telling you how wonderful and how great and all the things you wanted to hear. And it goes back and forth like that. It can take minutes for that to happen. It can take hours. It can take days, weeks, sometimes even months when that's occurring, which makes you feel like you're going crazy if you're the victim of that. Then there's ghosting. Ghosting is making yourself hard to reach. You know, when you text that person and they're not texting back for days, or they're not calling you back when you ask them to call you right back, or they're late all the time, they're not accessible, they're not answering the phone. That's ghosting, making themselves hard to reach. Hoovering is another tactic, another strategy, I should say. You might look at that and say, well, you mean hovering? No, hoovering is like the Hoover vacuum cleaner of the past. Those were the best vacuum cleaners in the past. Well, hoovering is sucking you back in. It's drawing you back in. Either they've thrown you away and now they need you, they're pulling the string back again, and they're sucking you back in by saying all the things you wanted to hear before, doing those things you wanted them to do before makes you feel like they're changed and, oh, this is going to be wonderful, and you get sucked back in. Tantrums, just like that, they get angry. It could be over a little thing or a big thing, but most often it's a little thing. Suddenly there's a tantrum occurring. Passive-aggressive behavior. So for the more covert narcissist, that is, you've got someone who is more under the table type. They're not as obvious as the overt narcissist. They're more passive-aggressive behaviors, slamming the door. Well, that could be either way, but oftentimes it's passive-aggressive, being late and so on. Those kinds of things are seen more by that covert, under-the-table narcissist. And what goes along with that oftentimes in that category of the under-the-table type strategies of mind games is feigning ignorance. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I don't remember you telling me that. Or, oh, you never told me that. Or, oh, I didn't hear that. They feign ignorance, and it makes you think, well, maybe I didn't. Over time, you start to feel, I'm going crazy. Something's wrong here, and it weakens you. It weakens you, and it lowers your self-esteem all the more. Being a victim, you're victimizing me. I'm not victimizing you. You did this, you did that. How do you think that makes me feel? Well, they're not feeling bad. They're just feeling revenge, and they're just feeling like, oh, I'm playing this game to win. I'm not playing this game to lose. Withholding emotions or sex. Well, that's not right either. That's often used as a mind game for the narcissist, whether covert or overt, in playing these games to get their way, playing you. Gaslighting, the term gaslighting came from a play in 1938, and the play was called Gaslight. And then in 1940s, they made a movie of that play. And in the story, the husband attempts to convince his wife and others that she's insane. And he does it by manipulating small elements, small things that are going on in her environment, and insisting that she's mistaken. Oh, that's wrong. That really didn't happen. She's remembering things incorrectly, or delusional when she points out these changes. Oh, well, that's not really happening. I wonder if you're delusional. I wonder if something's wrong. You should go see the doctor. You should see a psychiatrist. There's something wrong with you. These things aren't really happening. The play's title alludes to how the abusive husband slowly dims the gas lights in their house. So the lights are dimmer and dimmer. And she's saying, what's going on? Why are the lights so dim? And there's nothing wrong with the lights. They're fine. They're as bright as they've always been. Well, over time, they get dimmer, and over time, they start to think, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here? There must be something wrong with me. So slowly the lights are dimmer in the home while pretending nothing has changed in an effort to make his wife doubt her own perceptions. He further uses the lights in the sealed off attic, up in the attic where the junk is and all that. And he secretly starts searching for, in the play, he secretly starts searching for jewelry and things from a woman that he had previously murdered. And in that searching, he doesn't just search, he bangs, he makes noise, he speaks out loud. And in doing that, she's hearing these noises coming from up above. And later she asks him, "Who's up there? There's someone up there. There must be something." "I never heard anything," he says. And this repeatedly goes on. And before you know it, she thinks she's going crazy. And he intends to have her committed and get her estate or whatever he wants to get from that. Whew, that would drive me crazy as well. So gaslighting is from that play, the term gaslight, and it has become a hallmark in narcissistic or Jezebelian abuse. Manipulation and emotional abuse, destabilizing the victim and delegitimizing victim beliefs, blatant lies, falsely accusing others, spin the truth, and ultimately distort your reality. If you've ever talked with a narcissist over here in this spectrum, and certainly the Jezebel way over here, and hopefully you've never met someone like that, you start to realize, how can I have a conversation with this person? Because they put the spin on everything you say to give power to them, to exert their wonderfulness over you, their complete knowledge. You could say, the sky is blue. They'll look at it. Well, you know, it's not quite blue, it's turquoise. The door's open. Well, you know, I didn't leave it open. You must have left it open. Now, those things over and over again begin to make you feel like reality is being distorted. Signs of gaslighting, victimization include some of the following. There's all kinds of end results, but these are some of the more commonly seen ones. You no longer feel like the person you used to be. When you're in any relationship, even if it's a business relationship, and you feel like over time you've been taken away from your self, sense of self is vague, becoming more vague over time. You're not being able to do the things needed that you feel needing to be done. Well, that sense of self, that sense of personhood is being siphoned away. You feel more anxious and less confident than you used to be. You often wonder if you're being too sensitive. You feel like everything you do is wrong. Why bother doing anything? You always think it's your fault when things go wrong. You're apologizing often. You have a sense that something's wrong, but aren't able to identify what it is. Can't quite put my finger on it. I just don't see it. And you know, love is blind, makes it harder to see. You often question whether your response to your partner is appropriate, because they're telling you it never is. You make excuses for your partner's behavior. Those are just a few. What happens then? Oh, man, it must be me. I don't know. You become wimpy, you might say. You become a blob. I recall speaking to a teacher. I was in a workshop for a domestic abuse workshop for getting certification or authorization for doing domestic violence groups in Volusia County in Florida. And we followed the Duluth model of domestic abuse. And one of the teachers that came down for this 3 or 4 day workshop had come out of an abusive relationship, a very abusive relationship. And I asked her at the end of the workshop, what went through her mind during that time that she was in there, and how did she pull away? And of course she gave us some stories during the workshop, but some of the things I was more interested in some more details. And she said, you know, I look back on that and I'd shake my head, and all I can think of is my mind was a blob. Because over time, the abuses, and she didn't use the term mind game at the time, but that was the emotional abuse that kept going over time, constant, made her feel like she had no will of her own, no mind of her own, and she described it as, my mind was like a blob. And the only thing that caused her to pull away from it was one day he was beating her, and she realized she didn't care anymore. She didn't care if she died. She didn't care if she was maimed. She didn't care what happened. And at that point she recognized, wait a minute, I can just leave. Even though he's threatened to kill me, I don't care. Even though he's threatened to make my life miserable, more miserable than it is, I didn't care anymore. It was when she hit that final bottom that she said, I'm going to do this. I can do this because I don't care what happens. And she did it. And she was able to get out, and lo and behold, he didn't do any of those things, of course, that he threatened to do. She got out and she looks back on it. She's very happy she did. But that's all she could describe, was her mind was a blob. That's the mind games. That's what they do over time. Don't let that happen to you. Or if you know someone that's happening to, help them to recognize, encourage them, give them support, be a source of strength in whatever ways you can, because they have to recognize it. You can't make them recognize it. It has to come from within. The empowering truths to all this that I look at is, in Jesus Christ Messiah, I'm being taught by the Son of God. That makes me feel, wait a minute, I'm getting the best teacher possible in helping me to learn how to live my life the best way possible. The Son of God. I can trust that teaching, and I can follow that teaching. I'm better able to recognize unsafe people when I follow that teaching. I'm warned of narcissistic Jezebels who are like ravenous wolves in sheep's clothing. When I follow that teaching, I can see it more easily, those red flags, even when they first start, becomes easier to see because I'm following the Son of God's teaching. In the Scriptures, and in this one scripture I alluded to a moment ago, I'm better able to recognize unsafe people, and those are my words, not the Scripture, but the Scripture behind that is 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 4-6, and it tells us, he is conceited and woefully ignorant, understanding nothing. Now I'm reading from the Amplified version of the Bible, which gives you more interpretation to the key words. So in Greek, you can have 3, 4, or more meanings to a particular word, and those meanings all apply. It's a matter of which one do they pick to put in the Bible. But when you add those meanings together, you get more depth in what's being said in that passage. So he says here, he's conceited and woefully ignorant, understanding nothing. Keep in mind, no empathy we spoke of in a previous episode, lack of empathy. So with that lack of empathy, there's lack of understanding. And here the Scripture's telling us lack of understanding. He has a morbid interest in controversial questions and disputes about words. We'll pause there a minute. That conversation I mentioned, how do you have that conversation with someone that's narcissistic or Jezebelian? Well, how can you when they're constantly disputing your words? they're constantly creating conflict, pressure, problems in a simple conversation. And so most people tell me, I just stop talking to him. You know, I just avoid him, that's all I can do. Or I don't question what he says or what she says. They know what's going to happen if they do. So controversial questions and disputes about words, which produces envy, quarrels, verbal abuse, evil suspicions, and perpetual friction between men who are corrupted in mind and deprived of the truth, who think that godliness is a source of profit, a lucrative money-making business. Withdraw from them, the scripture says. Whoa, wait a minute here. I see a lot more people out there now who are falling into this narcissistic spectrum and this Jezebelian spectrum as they get over here. Profit, deprived from truth, that is, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Money-making schemes, if that sounds familiar with anyone you know, withdraw from them, the Bible tells us. But godliness actually is a source of great gain when accompanied by contentment. That contentment, remember Paul, the Apostle Paul said he learned how to be content in all things. He found how to be content in all things. Here the scripture is telling us that. Great gain when accompanied by contentment, that contentment which comes from a sense of inner confidence based on the sufficiency of God. He or she is not going to make you content. That business, that job is not going to make you content. It's the self-sufficiency that's from within that you learn how to be content in all circumstances. But the narcissist or Jezebelian spirit or attitude wants to convince you that your contentment is based on them. You can't live without them. Look how much better off you are because of them. And they're using you to inflate that fantasy bubble of their minds and to keep you supplying their needs to get what they want, so they're content. And yet they never get enough. They're never content themselves. Well, I hope this was helpful for you today. If you got something out of this, press that like button or subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Ring that bell and you'll get notified when new programs come out. We'll be going next time into a couple of other areas of these mind games to get some more understanding of the mind games. I'm sure it'll be helpful. Thanks for watching. God bless.